Career as a historian, archivist, and curator for the U.S. Army in 2004 prior to returning to her alma mater, Monmouth University, to teach full-time. She teaches over a dozen different courses, including Intro to Public History, Museums and Archives Management Basics, and Historic Site Preservation, Interpretation, and Management. In August of 2023, she became curator of the university's Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music after having worked with the center for many years in her faculty role. Thank you so much for joining us, Melissa, and I will hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to get out and tell people about the work that we're doing here. Let's get these slides up for you and we'll be off to the races. Does it look like you are seeing what you are supposed to see?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to provide an overview of what we do here, how the archives came to be, our, current mission and our exciting new construction that's going on right now. At the end, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions at all that you might have. So, um, of course, Megan just told you a little bit about me. I started my career as a public historian for the Army, and then the military base I worked at closed. My job moved to Maryland, and I always say that I resigned in protest rather than leave the great state of New Jersey, but I was fortunate to come back to my alma mater and teach. As Megan noted, in my faculty role, I had the ability to start working with the Springsteen archives because it was kind of a perfect sandbox for students who were doing public history work, right? So in my oral history classes, our capstone project would be, doing oral history interviews with folks from Bruce's circle. You're looking at here a picture of me and my colleague Eileen Chapman with Bruce, looking at baby Bruce in an exhibit that actually started out as a class project. So, I've been working with the archives for a while, and as they prepared to launch this, new museum, which is set to open in the spring of 2026, they pulled me over to be the curator and help get that building off the ground. So it's a little bit about my background and how I came to be working in this role. Just briefly, a little bit about Bruce, because I have to keep in mind that not everybody knows Bruce Springsteen's life story, although I assume most have some type of awareness of him. The rock star Bruce Springsteen, whose career now spans 50 plus years, is born September 23rd, 1949, at a hospital in Long Branch here in central New Jersey, right on the Jersey Shore. I always have to point out for my mom that my mom and Bruce share a birthday, September 23rd, although my mom will point out that she's a few years younger than Bruce. So, Bruce is born just down the road from our campus here at Monmouth University, and he grows up in a working class town about 20 miles from our campus, Freehold, New Jersey. You see baby Bruce on the right there, and Main Street, Freehold, around the time Bruce was born on the left. He is born to, a real working class family. His family really struggles to make ends meet. They live with his paternal grandparents for a long spell. So his is not a charmed childhood by any means, but he does have a close relationship in particular with his mom. And he talks about how music was in his life from his earliest memories because of his mom and her sisters, who were always singing and dancing whenever they had their family get togethers. Now, as Bruce got older, his musical influences came less from his mom and his aunts, and from big rockers like Elvis makes a huge impression on him, and then of course the Beatles, as did so many people in Bruce's age group there. And as so many people do, he starts getting into bands, local bands, in his teen years. His first real band is the Castiles, and then he's in a number of other local bands, and they're playing at high school gyms and swim clubs and VFW halls. So he's in a number of different bands, from the Castiles to Earth to Child to Steel Mill. And his kind of last band before he makes it big is Steel Mill. They enjoy a huge cult following here at the Jersey Shore, also down in Richmond, Virginia, where they had friends who went to college. But Bruce gets to a point where he realizes, you know what? This is not working. I'm not breaking through. I'm not going to make it big here with these local bands. So he winds up going to New York on his own, actually, as a solo artist. And he gets his first recording contract with Columbia Records as a solo artist. He releases his first two albums in 1973, Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey. He very purposely made that the title because it would have been easier for Columbia to market him as a New York artist. But he was like, no, I'm from the Jersey Shore. And so, Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey. And his second album, again in that same year, is The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. The E Street, ultimately becomes the name of his band, the E Street Band. And E Street is the name of a street in a shore town, again, here at the Jersey Shore. So those first two albums that come out in 1973, they are popular here at the shore, but they are not selling like hotcakes more broadly. And there's actually this come to Jesus moment where the record company calls Bruce in, kind of like getting called to the principal's office. And they're like, that last album, I'm spitballing the number, but it's something like 30,000 copies. They say something, it only sold like 30,000 copies and it's not looking good. And Bruce is like, 30,000 people bought my album? That's amazing. And the record company's like, no, 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 that's not good sales. And I always tell that little story because it was not immediately evident in 1973 that Bruce would go on to have a career where he released over 20 studio albums and, literally as of 2024 was selling out stadiums around the globe. That was not a foregone conclusion in 1973. So Bruce kind of, goes to ground. He writes this album, Born to Run, which comes out in 1975. It's got much more broader, more accessible themes, and it does catch on. It does get wide radio play. And with that, Bruce does, secure his career and become, a music star. It's in 1975, following the release of Born to Run, that he famously appears on the covers of Time and Newsweek simultaneously, which was like, earth shattering. This was something that like popes or presidents could do. For a rock star to do that was, really unheard of. The equivalent, of course, of going viral today. So that really signaled that Bruce had made it. Very early on, Bruce, he starts to enjoy this commercial success, and he will enjoy commercial success for decades, but he decides very early on that he wants to use whatever platform he has to support causes that he believes in. And this, doesn't always make him the most popular. You've got, go on any internet chat room, social media site, and you'll see the shut up and sing crowd, right? When any artist tries to use their platform for a cause. But Bruce has decided, he doesn't care about that. He's going to support the causes that he believes in. One of the earliest causes that he supports is that of Vietnam veterans. He's critical in helping to save the organization Vietnam Veterans of America. Other causes that he's supported over the years have been, food insecurity, non-nuclear energy, that of 9/11 first responders, and on and on. But this, cause of Vietnam veterans that he gets involved in is really close and personal to him because he knew, local kids really that had died in Vietnam. He himself has the threat of the draft hanging over him. In fact, the drummer in his first real band, the Castiles, Bart Haynes, goes to Vietnam and is killed there. And Bruce has written and spoken very movingly about how Bart comes to one last, band practice in his Marine uniform, and he's trying to play the drum intro to Wipeout. I hope you can imagine that drum intro to Wipeout in your head. And he says, any drummer worth their salt in the 1960s had to be able to play that intro. And for some reason, Bart could never nail it. And he comes to one last practice in his uniform, and he tries to play it, and he can't. And they're all, having a beer and wishing him good luck. And Bart's joking about how he couldn't even find Vietnam on a map. And Bart goes to Vietnam and, of course, is killed there. And so this was a cause that was really personal to Bruce, and I think really inspired him to champion the plight of Vietnam veterans and other causes that he believed in these ways. He's won many accolades for his musical career and for his activism. Here he is getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama, who he becomes quite close friends with. So that's just a little bit about his career. Of course, we could talk for a whole hour or more about Bruce. We have a whole semester-long class here at Monmouth about Bruce. There's just a thumbnail overview to talk about Bruce, as we are his official repository, which I'll get into a little bit now as we talk about our mission. We are the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music. So we are Bruce's official repository, and I'll talk a little more about what that means as far as our collecting mission. But so we have that formal relationship with Bruce himself. When you look at the composition of our board, like his longtime manager and collaborator John Landau is on our board, et cetera, et cetera. But we also are the Center for American Music, and that is incredibly important. It's something Bruce wanted. It's something that, as an educator, is enormously exciting to me. It's not just about Bruce. It's about teaching American history through this very accessible prism of music. So while our collecting mission is largely limited to Bruce, right, just based on space constraints and stuff, with our exhibits, our programming, etc., we do seek to, tell broader stories about American music history, US history more broadly, and the ways that music has both shaped and reflected American life for almost 250 years now. So a little bit about the history of how this all comes to be, what we now call the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music at Monmouth University. It's a long title that does not lend itself to a tidy acronym, right? Sometimes we say BSACAM, but when you say it that way, the letters are out of order and it drives me nuts. But so we now call the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music at Monmouth University starts as a fan-based collection. As I said, Bruce has been at this for 50 plus years. He's got a large, global, very dedicated fandom, and fandoms collect stuff, right? Whether it's Bruce or Taylor Swift fans or Harry Potter fans, fandoms collect stuff. And so, I'm truncating greatly in the interest of time, but you've got a group of dedicated fans who come together and they decide they are going to pool their collections and make them publicly accessible. They think there'll be interest by the general public and by scholars. And so they actually form a 501c3. They call it the Bruce Springsteen Special Collection. The 501c3 is the Friends of the Bruce Springsteen Special Collection. And at first, this stuff is just like in people's, basements and attics, but they find a home for it at the Asbury Park Public Library. I'm listing all of these like shore towns here. I probably should have had a map for you. Asbury Park is one of these, Central Jersey shore towns. It was a place where Bruce played a lot. It has a strong music scene going back to the turn of the 20th century, like even predating Bruce. There's a lot of clubs there. The Upstage, of course, the Stone Pony is probably the most well-known where Bruce played over the years. And so that's how, it comes to find a home at the Asbury Park Public Library. But the library is the local lending library, right? They're not set up for archives and special collections. So they're incredibly generous in offering to provide space, but it's like a closet. They're storing stuff where they can. They're not really equipped to manage this, and there are a few problems that arise. One is fans start hearing that there is a Bruce Springsteen special collection at the library and they want to come visit it, but it's not really set up for visitors, right? And there's only so much bandwidth that the staff at the library have. Another problem I understand is that people hear there's a Bruce Springsteen special collection, and now they want to clean out their basements, their attics, and send the stuff to the collection. Quickly becomes, an untenable solution for this to live at the library. Again, condensing in the interest of time, they need to find a new home for the stuff. And Monmouth University, which is just down the road, as I've said, it's the local university. We are a 4-year private arts school. Well, actually, we've got undergrad, graduate, and a few doctoral programs now. But there are a few folks who begin to advocate for it to come to Monmouth University. Foremost amongst those champions of the collection coming to Monmouth is my now colleague, Eileen Chapman. Eileen is a person with a strong arts background. She managed the Stone Pony at Asbury Park for a time. She's a founder of the Jersey Jazz and Blues Festival, and she happened to be working here at Monmouth University's Center for the Arts. So she kind of knew that this was going on, being involved in the New Jersey Shore music scene, and was advocating for it to come to Monmouth. Also involved is our executive director, a gentleman by the name of Bob Santelli. So Bob Santelli is a Jersey Shore guy. He's actually a Monmouth University alum. He starts out as a student journalist for the Monmouth University campus newspaper, goes to the local paper, the Asbury Park Press, moves on to write for Rolling Stone, and then parlays that into a career helping to open both the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Grammy Museum. So he was a natural person as an alum to kind of get pulled in and help with this effort. So Eileen and Bob are championing bringing this from the Asbury Park Public Library to Monmouth University. Interestingly enough, the librarian of the university at the time, it's not the same librarian we have now, the librarian at the time didn't want it to go to the university library, didn't think it was a good fit, didn't think it matched the mission. And so Eileen and Bob and a few others, persist. And what the university winds up doing is donating a residential house to this effort. It's a residential house adjacent to campus that the university happened to own. And so they say, okay, you can put the stuff there. And so the collection moves into this residential house, and Eileen Chapman goes from working at the Monmouth University Center for the Arts, running programming, to coming to steward the collection. So that's kind of how it gets over here originally. It starts as a fan-based collection, 501c3 in 2001. It's 2011 by the time it comes to Monmouth University. By 2017, Bruce hears about this, and our executive director, as I said, Bob Santelli, knows Bruce from his time at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Grammy Museum, and they had done a book project together. So, for a variety of reasons, Bruce hears about it and decides that he will make the university his official repository. So it's in 2017 then that you have the fan-based collection combine with Bruce's personal collection and get that new name, Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music. I'm going to pause the story there for a moment and explain why Monmouth. Like, why did this come to Monmouth University? I've already mentioned simple geography. We are located not far from where Bruce was born, not far from where he grew up, just 5 minutes from Asbury Park, where he, enjoyed so much of his early musical career. A lot of people assume Bruce is a Monmouth alum because people often donate their papers to their university. Bruce is not a Monmouth alum. He did a couple semesters at Ocean County College, which is in the county down from us. It doesn't love school. Bruce loves learning. He embarks on this kind of journey of self-education and reading, but college wasn't for him. He did know Monmouth, though. He'd played here many, many times early in his career. And I love to go and find, the ads and the reviews of his early shows in our campus newspapers. So, it was local. Bruce had a familiarity with the campus. He could, with his wife, live anywhere in the world and raise his children anywhere in the world, but he chose to do it right here in Monmouth County. So, it was the comfort, the familiarity, wanting to keep his collection here in New Jersey. My understanding also is that Bruce wanted it to be, he loved the idea of it being on a college campus where it could really be grounded in educational functions versus just being its own freestanding entity. That's a little bit about why Monmouth. This is Bruce here playing in front of our National Register building, the Great Hall, back in his pre-Columbia contract days. And then this is just some press coverage from when in 2017, excuse me, in October of 2023, Bruce was here on campus to announce that we were going to build a new building. So I told you when the collection comes here in 2011, it gets put in this tiny Cape Cod house. Okay, it's secure, it's climate controlled, great. But once Bruce gets involved, makes us his official repository in 2017, it becomes clear that tiny house is insufficient, right? For the magnitude of the mission that we have been blessed with. And so they begin talking about building a custom built archive and museum for the collection. These talks, if anyone's been involved in a new construction build, you know that takes a lot of time and effort and fundraising, right? So these talks started before the pandemic, and then of course the pandemic, torpedoed those for quite some time. And so it wasn't until 2023 that we had done enough initial fundraising and we were prepared to announce that we were building this new building. So that's again, Bruce here in October of 2023 for the announcement. I will show you in a few slides the artist rendering of the building, but construction is now underway. It's going to be 30,000 square feet, 9,000 of that is exhibits, and it is scheduled to open in the spring of 2026. Construction gods cooperating. A little bit about our collection. So what's in it? Again, this is a photo from in the current house. We do have everything, housed in proper archival materials. The house is climate controlled. It is, of course, secured and alarmed and all that good stuff. It is fascinating mix of materials. As I said, it includes stuff from the fans and increasingly from Bruce. Of course, we don't have all of Bruce's materials on site currently because of space constraints, but we have access to his personal collection as needed for different exhibits and such. I'm happy to answer any questions about that later. But now, just to give you a glimpse, on the far left, you see Bruce's high school yearbook. In the middle, that is a, Babe Ruth League, like a little league baseball program featuring Bruce's name. We've got some of his like school term papers and notebooks and things like that, which you can see on the far right there. These are actually pieces of the wall, just to give you an idea how eclectic the collection gets. Pieces of the wall featuring day glow 1960s art from this club called the Upstage. When people think of Bruce and clubs, if they're going to associate him with a musical venue, they associate him probably with the Stone Pony. All kinds of national acts have played at the Stone Pony, but the Stone Pony doesn't open until 1974. Bruce gets his first recording contract in 1973. So by the time he's playing at the Stone Pony, he's already made it, essentially, right? This club, the Upstage, is one that's far lesser known, but it's where he plays early as a teenager, where he meets a lot of members of what will become the E Street Band. So they were getting ready to gut this building, and someone was able to go get us chunks of the wall so that we could preserve them. As I said, of course, being Bruce's official repository, we're getting more and more of his personal materials. So we have these really great scrapbook collections. This is one of his mom, Adele's scrapbooks. So we've got, a few dozen of her scrapbooks where she was just, I'm a mom of two. I have two boys, 13 and 17. And you're proud of your kids, right? I have these big Tupperware bins where I throw awards and memorabilia. She was a scrapbooker. So from his earliest musical career, she was snipping things out and pasting them in scrapbooks. And so we preserve those and we're working to digitize those. It's newspaper clippings, but it's also intimate family photos, letters. Just yesterday I posted, it was a letter to Bruce's parents, Adele and Doug, from a Rolling Stone reporter. And I was laughing because this letter was a few weeks after the release of Born to Run in August of 1975. So it's a September 1975 letter. And the Rolling Stone reporter had interviewed Bruce's parents. And one line in the letter is like, I hope Mrs. Springsteen is getting to enjoy her morning coffee before the phone starts ringing off the hook. Because, of course, Born to Run had become such a sensation. So a real intimate look at, the inside workings of Bruce's life and the Springsteen family more broadly. Another great scrapbook collection we have comes from Texan Marion Vineyard. Again, intimate photos, Christmas cards, get well soon cards, just all kinds of different backstage passes. Texan Marion Vineyard were a couple from Freehold, Bruce's hometown. They never had kids. And when Bruce and his friends were teenagers, and particularly when he's in his first band, the Castiles, Tex and Marion were, older than the teens, but younger than the parents. So they were like the cool grown-ups. And they would let the Castiles practice in their house. Marion fed them. Tex acted as their first manager. And although the Castiles break up and Bruce goes on to have this, incredible career, he keeps in touch with Bruce and Marion for the rest of their lives, which I think says a lot about what kind of person Bruce is. And Marion scrapbooked for the rest of her life. So we've got those in our collection. Those are certainly very special. Different things like alternate album covers. So Born in the USA might be Bruce's most popular, instantly recognizable album and song. You can see the famous album cover on the left. Well, what the record company used to do is actually mock up album covers and like physically present them to the artists and say, which one do you like? So for several of Bruce's albums, we have the alternate album covers where you can see what might have been. And then increasingly, we're getting more and more artifacts into the collection, costumes, instruments, etc. This is something that whenever it goes on display, people really love, which I find so funny because it's not that sexy of an artifact, right? But these are keys from early tours when the guys were so tickled that they could actually afford to stay in hotels, they would take the keys with them. And so that's a collection of keys from the early touring days. And then, as I noted, this is from the 2019 exhibit, Springsteen, His Hometown, which I said started as one of my class projects and then turned into a co-curated exhibit with our local historical society, the Monmouth County Historical Association. We go and we essentially check out jewelry, clothing, instruments as needed for our different exhibit projects. And then I noted that our collecting mission is largely limited to Springsteen in the interest of space. We do acquire other things on an as needed basis. So like in a moment, I'm going to tell you about this exhibit we have looking at 250 years of American music history. Obviously, you need an Edison standard phonograph for that. So we do acquire other things as needed. We just try to be really judicious in what we take so that we're not taking more, of course, than we can responsibly steward. So about our efforts to date, what are we working on? I should note we are a very small team here at the Springsteen Archives. We have our executive director, as I noted, Bob, our director, Eileen Chapman. I'm our curator. We have a programs manager, Jerry Houseworth, an operations manager, Annalon LeMay, and a part-time processing archivist, Graciela. We do get some support from the university. So for example, the university's legal team looks over our contracts, etc. But the core BSACAM team is a tiny team, but we've got a lot going on. We do, as I've kind of noted already, do traveling exhibits. We don't have our own exhibit space yet, but we do traveling exhibits. This was that 2019 exhibit, Springsteen, His Hometown, which looked at Bruce's relationship with Freehold. He maintains a close relationship with his hometown of Freehold to this day. This is our current big traveling exhibit, Music America, Iconic Objects from America's Music History. So it brings together close to 150 artifacts from the colonial period to the present. These artifacts come from our collection and from institutions across the country like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Grammy Museum, New Orleans Jazz Museum, the estates of many of the artists, private collectors, and we use these artifacts to tell stories about American life over the past 250 years. The earliest artifact in the exhibit is a colonial era hymnal. And then in our first run, it went all the way through to Taylor Swift's, guitar and one of her stage costumes and everything in between. So, Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA outfit you see there. We've got Ray Charles sunglasses, a costume from the Village People. Tupac's coat is displayed next to Kurt Cobain's lab coat, field costume thing on the bottom. You see our executive director, Bob Santelli, showing someone Frank Sinatra's ukulele and bow tie. I mean, I could go on and on. We kind of use these, quote, famous people artifacts, as I say, to tell stories about the artists, yes, but to serve as a portal into broader stories about race, class, gender, etc. in American life. This exhibit opened at the LBJ Presidential Library and Museum in Austin, Texas in February of last year. It's now at the Grammy Museum in Mississippi. It's going back to Texas to the George H.W. Bush Library in College Station, Texas in April, May, and then it'll be back here in New Jersey for our opening in the spring of 2026. So that's a very heavy lift, but very exciting. We had a pop-up store this summer on the boardwalk in Asbury Park, which was a great way to show people a sample of items from the collection and also to sell our merchandise, because I should note, we are a separate 501c3. So while we are owned by the university, we are university employees, we are responsible for raising our own money, both for our operations and for our capital campaign for the new building. That's very important to me, as a longtime educator. We're not pulling money that would go otherwise to student programs, scholarships, etc. We are raising our own funds for this project. So every little bit helps. We've got a pop-up version. So the Music America exhibit, speaking of raising funds, is rented by the institutions that host it. We've got a pop-up version of it that is available to our local historical societies, museums, libraries, who, wouldn't be able to rent that or wouldn't have the space to rent it. We do a lot of programming, a lot of kind of conversation with events where Bruce and the band will come to campus. This is our executive director, Bob, interviewing Bruce. We do anniversary programming for the various albums. So in 2003, it was the 50th anniversary of Bruce's first 2 albums. So we had him and the band and production and A&R folks to campus to talk about those albums. We also always, of course, bring historians in to talk about the historical context of the albums and their legacy and impact today. I love this great photo of Bruce and our student workers. We generally hire roughly 8 to 10 student workers per semester. Bruce always has the time for them, which I think is lovely. We do musical programming. This is Lyle Lovett and other artists performing a selection of Americana when our Music America exhibit opened at the LBJ Library. We do a lot of your traditional history lectures. This is Doug Brinkley from Rice University, who was on campus last year for our, what we call the President's Lecture in Music, History, and Contemporary America. So last year it was Doug Brinkley talking about music and the environmental movement in the 1960s and how that can inform activism today, environmental activism today. And then this year, just last week, 2 weeks ago already, we had Sean Willentz from Princeton on campus talking about Bob Dylan and protest music, which was timely, both because the Bob Dylan biopic is in theaters and, of course, because of our ongoing political climate. As our local educator, I'm always out and about locally doing different talks on music history. There's a, standard 45 minutes plus Q&A on 250 years of American music history and, Vietnam War music and the V-discs of World War II, et cetera, et cetera. I host an online series, Conversations with Our Curator. Want to make sure that we have some free virtual programming so that folks can enjoy even if they can't get here to the beautiful Jersey Shore. So I've been interviewing some wonderful authors who have done books about Bruce and music history more broadly. That's free once a month on Zoom. We are just starting to get into our K to 12 educator programming. We did a summer institute, which was largely led, of course, by LBJ last summer. Sheila, their education coordinator, is amazing. I just kind of helped her find speakers here and there. But it is important to us as we have the bandwidth that we are reaching out to educators and ensuring that we understand how we can best serve their needs. Our biggest fundraiser of the year is what we call American Music Honors. So with the American Music Honors program, we have artists to campus and we give them an award. We give them American Music Honors for both their musical legacy and how they have used their platform for the greater good. So the first year we gave awards to Stevie Van Zandt from the E Street Band, Darlene Love, Sam Moore, Steve Earle. So they get up, they get their award, they perform, one or two of their songs, and then at the end there's a big jam session. Last year it was Dion DiMucci, Jackson Brown, John Mellencamp, and Mavis Staples. And then we just announced this year's event, which will be in April. We are honoring, gosh, now I'm going to draw a blank, Smokey Robinson, Emmylou Harris, John Fogerty, Joe Ely. Yes. So all that information is on our website, springsteenarchives.org. So Jon Stewart was our host the first year. And when he said that, I was like, hey, wait, is he making fun of us? But he was amazing. Last year, our host was Brian Williams, and we'll have Brian Williams back again this year. The next slide, I hope you're hearing them okay. The next slide is just a brief snippet from the jam session at the end.
Melissa, I'm not sure if the sound is going through for everybody.
Is that better, Megan, or no?
I'm still not hearing it, so I'm not sure. I apologize.
All right, no worries. We're gonna skip. You were just getting a little snippet of 10th Avenue freeze out, but we also have an active oral history program. We interview, of course, like Bruce and the band, but we're also very, very interested in interviewing folks who don't generally have their story told. So, for example, on the left there, you see one of our student workers, Carly, is interviewing Marilyn Rocky. Marilyn Rocky was Bruce's landlord when he was writing Born to Run, the album that essentially, saved his career. And it's funny, we have letters in the archive where he's writing Marilyn, apologizing for being behind on the bills because he didn't have the funding yet, right? He hadn't made it big yet. On the other side of the screen, you see a student and I interviewing Vinny Lopez, who was Bruce's first E Street Band drummer. Constantly different research ongoing, right? Whether we have students in doing research or we have, various authors and filmmakers in. You may have heard they're currently making a film, Deliver Me from Nowhere, about the making of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska. They wanted to make sure they were being historically accurate, right? We're always doing our own research. For example, we're working to get the Stone Pony, which I've referenced earlier, on the National Register of Historic Places. We've always got different articles. We're working on a few different book projects ourselves. We just entered into a partnership with Rutgers University Press for a Springsteen Archives imprint. So that's very exciting. And then, I've foreshadowed this already, but what does the future hold? This is our tiny house. So this is a tour group that came from Ireland, coming to do Springsteen tours of the Jersey Shore. Is a whole cottage industry. And, we're a stop on the tours currently. But this group couldn't even fit in the house at once, right? I kind of had to cycle people through. So that gives you an idea of just how truly tiny we are and how badly we need our new building. So this is an artist's rendering of the new building. It's meant to evoke the Jersey Shore Boardwalk. As I said, construction is underway. It'll be 30,000 square feet. It will open in the spring-ish of 2026. It's just another rendering. It is on the campus here at Monmouth University. The first floor has a roughly 250-seat theater, a small gift shop, and then the exhibits on the first floor are dedicated to American music history broadly. When you get upstairs, you get into the Bruce and the E Street Band exhibits and the custom-built archive. So that is that. I know that's a lot of information in a short period of time. If anybody wants to scan the QR code, that will take you to our link tree, which has all of the relevant links. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you might have. Oh, I see some questions in the chat, so I'm happy to just kind of start with those myself. Have I met Bruce? Yes, I've met Bruce several times now. Super nice. He's always very nice. I see I got some Vinny Lopez fans in the chat there. Yes. Are there any ethics that you can't collect Bruce items for yourself? So yeah, I mean, that's, I think, kind of the standard in the field. So yes, I just like when I was at Fort Monmouth, I wouldn't collect Fort Monmouth stuff myself. Now I don't collect Bruce stuff myself. What topics does the Springsteen course at Monmouth cover? So we have two different, it's funny, I actually don't teach the Springsteen course. My colleagues, Ken Womack and Ken Campbell, both teach different Springsteen courses. One kind of looks more at like Springsteen as literature, and the other kind of uses Bruce as a prism through which to explore topics in U.S. history, because Ken Womack is, an English professor, and Ken Campbell is a history professor. Does Bruce put any materials on restricted access? We do have some things that we consider more sensitive, like notebooks, for example. We need to kind of make sure we know people have a legitimate reason for accessing certain things. We were going across, someone was scanning scrapbooks the other day, and like Bruce's voter registration card was in there. So, that's something we would keep on restricted access. So we are kind of keeping things, we're very, very sensitive to the fact, sorry, I'm rambling. We're very sensitive to the fact that Bruce is still with us, right? I think a lot of people work at an institution where their person, right, is gone. But we're very sensitive to the fact that Bruce is still around, his kids are around, he's got grandchildren, and we want to be very respectful of that relationship. But that's more something we put on ourselves than is mandated on us, if that makes sense. Let's see. Is there space to serve materials to researchers in the building plan? Yes. So on the second floor, we have a custom built archival space. So there is a private research room. There is kind of a public reading room. There are cubbies dedicated, we call them cubbies specifically for listening to audio files. So that will all take place in the new building, the rendition of which you saw. What are the steps to establish traveling exhibit? If you're asking specifically about taking the Music America exhibit, I'm going to type my email in the chat. Everybody's welcome to send me emails, questions, anything. But specifically as regards that, there's, an info sheet I can send you about that. It's designed for roughly 3,000 square feet. It's got some flexibility. And then we would discuss the rental fees, of course. How do you deal with copyright considerations? So this is interesting. We have an official relationship with Bruce, and we are a 501c3. So a lot of times, like we can use Bruce's music, for example, even though he sold his catalog to Sony, we have a relationship with Bruce, we have a relationship with Sony. So the music we can generally use when we go and we ask and we keep everybody in the loop and we have these conversations. Generally, that's not a problem. Copyrights come up if other people own the copyright. So for example, when dealing with some photographers, right? Like if we wanted to use an Annie Leibovitz photo, things might get a little more complicated. So we just kind of work through those on a case-by-case basis. We do have Bruce Juice. Somebody in the chat says there's a radio station that offered a collectible Bruce Juice container. It looked like an orange juice, and you would start your day with Bruce Juice is how it was marketed. We do have one of those, yes. Did the Center for American Music exist before the Springsteen Archives was established? No. So it starts as this fan-based group, just fan stuff. The Bruce Springsteen Special Collection comes to Monmouth as the Bruce Springsteen Special Collection. When Bruce gets involved, then this new concept is developed, Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music. That was something that, from what I'm told, I wasn't involved at that stage in the process. I was still teaching in the Department of History and Anthropology at that time, but that was something that both Bruce and the folks at Monmouth wanted, that it not just be about Bruce, that it be the Center for American Music as well. How many discrete collections are defined in the archive right now? So this is something that this group would be interested in. I don't generally get into this with the general public. Right now, things are cataloged on like Excel spreadsheets. We really wrestled with what to move into, whether it would be something like archive space or past perfect, because, and I think this gets at Richard's question, because we are finding ourselves collecting more and more three-dimensional items versus paper. As we get into more costumes, instruments, etc., we're going to go with past perfect. So the bulk of the collection up to this point has been text documents, but we're moving more and more into artifacts now. Do we do fundraising? So yes, we do. We need to fundraise. As I said, we have to fundraise for both our operational budget and our capital campaign. We do, so that largely falls on our executive director. We don't have, a development person that works specifically for the Bruce Springsteen Archives. The university has an amazing development team who is able to assist us. But fundraising is constantly ongoing. It's public, so I can say that the building itself is $47 million. So that fundraising is just a constant ongoing process. And I think it's a little tricky for us because folks assume either we are just fully funded by the university or we are just fully funded by Bruce. I mean, and neither of those are true. We are a 501c3, we are fundraising. So that's a constant ongoing process. What is the oldest item? So in the Music America Traveling exhibit specifically, the oldest item is, I think it's a 1775. I would have to go check my records. I think it's a 1775 hymnal, which is on loan from Drew University. The oldest item in our collection, if I was guessing off the top of my head, I believe it is a 19th century Springsteen family Bible. Off the top of my head, I believe that to be the oldest item in our collection. And I have gone through all of the questions in the chat. If anybody wants to unmute and ask a question, you are welcome to do that. Or, as I said, I put my email in the chat. You can reach out anytime. Do we anticipate collecting other New Jersey musicians? Katie asks in the chat. Awesome question. So, again, we're building this beautiful new building and we're almost out of space in the new building. That isn't even there yet, right? So this is so tricky because you want to collect everything. It's really hard to say no. And more people keep coming to us asking us if we can take XYZ. So all I can say is that we are open to it if it's a good fit and if we can steward it responsibly. So we just have those conversations on a case-by-case basis as they come. Katie says Bon Jovi. We don't currently have a relationship with Bon Jovi outside of the fact that on my temporary exhibits list, I have one for Bon Jovi. So, so we will see what the future holds there, but we don't currently have a formal relationship of any kind with Bon Jovi. Are the student workers you mentioned assisting with processing or description of items? They have been up to this point. We are at this stage where we're getting ready to transfer into Past Perfect. So we'll see kind of how that goes. But the student workers come from the Department of History and Anthropology. We have a very robust music and theater arts program here. So we try to find projects that meet the students' goals, right? So if they want to go work in public history, we find them certain projects. If they want to work, with record companies or in music production, we try to find projects that are going to nurture those students' future career aspirations. Have any East Street band members donated items to the collection? Yes, absolutely. We work with the East Street band members all the time. So we do have materials from them. I'm thinking right now in storage, things that pop to mind like Clarence Clemens boots and saxophone, Danny Federici's accordion. Wait, is that here? But yes, we have we have items from other members of the E Street Band. Someone asks, "Are we acquiring electronic records?" We are. Yes, I'm seeing somebody give me a link to a Bon Jovi site, which I'll have to look at later. I just clicked that so I don't lose that. Thank you, Crystal. Awesome questions, everybody. Thank you.
Melissa, you had mentioned about doing oral histories. Is that something that's considered part of the collections, or is that something that's considered more of like kind of an in-house project that you guys are doing?
So we're constantly doing oral histories. We just partnered with Their Story to host the oral histories. It's just such, I don't know if you're familiar with Their Story. I can't say enough good things about them, how it helps you to process and make accessible the oral histories. But yeah, so we're conducting them and they're open for research. We consider them part of the collection. Yeah. Some of them, may be sealed for different reasons, but most of them are open for research. So it says, "What's in the guitar case over my shoulder?" That's not important. That's there because I'm supposed to be demoing a traveling trunk exhibit for teachers. So there's nothing exciting in there. All right, Megan, that's all the questions in the chat.
Anyone else have any other questions? Anything they want to ask while we have time?
This was awesome. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for listening. And, if there's any opportunity ever to collaborate, please reach out. I'd love to chat.
Thank you so much, Melissa. This was wonderful. And thank you all for coming. And we hope to see you at our next meet and greet. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Megan. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.